I'm just simply here to quickly introduce Christopher Stephen. We have a programming committee, and one of the things we've done is come up with this idea. It was actually Dr. Hangarter's, Brigida the owner's idea to have a director series again. We did one last year, and every month, hopefully this school year at least, we'll have a different director. This is the third for this semester. In December, watch for Melancholia, which, again, no matter what you think of Lars von Trier, it's stunning, stunning, stunning movie. So that will be our fourth one. So anyway, we have a director series that regularly introduces a director and shows a one-night-only film. Tonight is Christopher Sieving, my good colleague in film studies. This is Chris's third year? Fourth year at Athens. He teaches film studies, he does film history, criticism. He's got a book that just came out this year on black-themed movies, how Hollywood tried to sort of co-opt and win over a black audience in the 60s and 70s. He works also on avant-garde cinema, Andy Warhol in particular, and issues related to that. He's also hopefully going to bring us a series at some point, maybe on Japanese horror or other ideas. He works at horror cinema, Asian cinema. And we're just very thrilled to have him come and introduce a film for us finally here at Ciné. So please welcome Christopher Sieving.
Forgive as old habits die hard. As a lecturer, I usually work from notes because I know that I'm going to forget something important. I just wanted to say, and if I take too much time, please someone stop me. I wanted to say a few words about, first about Wong Kar-Wai, the director. And second, about the film you're going to see tonight, because it's a film that I think could use some context, or perhaps it would be helpful to have some context for. Well, Wong Kar-Wai is one of the best known and most critically esteemed Hong Kong directors, who started within the Hong Kong industry within the past 25 years or so. Just a little bit of biographical information. He's born in Shanghai in 1958, moves to Hong Kong with his parents 5 years later. And so he comes of age at a time that is a particularly compelling period for both Hong Kong at large and also for the Hong Kong film industry. Hong Kong, of course, is a former British colony. In 1898, it was leased by the Chinese to the British for a period of 99 years. And that handover date of 1997 was affirmed in 1984 through a treaty that was signed by both the British and the Chinese. So it is now today officially a Chinese special administrative region. But it has been guaranteed a degree of political autonomy until the year 2047. So remember that date. The years spanning from 1984, which again is when this treaty is signed, to 1997, when the actual handover took place, are also the peak years for the Hong Kong film industry as a commercial force, both within Southeast Asia, but also with relation to the Western world as well. And the best known sorts of Hong Kong films that became popular in the West during this period are typically the violent action pictures, gangster films, crime films of directors like John Woo, typically starring the Hong Kong actor Chow Yun-fat. The Hong Kong industry was well developed enough in the 80s and 90s in terms of a star system, in terms of regular production according to a regularized set of genres, that it was able to sustain an art cinema that developed sort of parallel with the action film industry. And it's the success of the action films that allowed a more quote-unquote artistic director like Wong Kar-Wai to thrive during this time. Wong is much more reliant on foreign audiences and foreign investors than someone like John Woo was back in the 90s. So Wong has made, at this point, he has just apparently completed shooting on his 10th feature. The film he just apparently is going to end, and with Wong you can never be absolutely sure. But the film that he's apparently just finished shooting on and is going to have ready for the Cannes Film Festival in 2012 is called The Grandmasters. It's a biopic about the kung fu master who taught Bruce Lee. And supposedly that will be ready for release next year, but yeah, with Wong, it's I think all bets are off. Just some of his best-known films in the West, and these are titles that might be familiar to you. Chungking Express from 1994, sort of his international breakthrough. In the Mood for Love in 2000, and 2046, which is the follow-up to In the Mood for Love in more ways than one. And based on the first few scenes of this film of 2046, you might get the impression that that Wong is working within a tradition within the larger post-war European art cinema, and that's the science fiction art film. It is somewhat reminiscent of films like Jean-Luc Godard's Alphaville, Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris, Chris Marker's La Jetée. There's a number of, I think, interesting parallels between the kind of philosophical strain of science fiction literature that really develops in the 60s and the European art film. But in fact, the science fiction elements in 2046 actually reflect the creative imagination of the film's main character, the character of Chow, played by Tony Leung. The science fiction elements in this film, the science fiction plotline, is actually a holdover from one of Wong's initial conceptions for this film, and the route that he took from original idea to where he eventually ended up, the finished film 2046, is, I think, fairly representative of his working methods, which are, I guess, circuitous would be a nice way of putting it, torturous maybe a not so nice way of putting it. But he initially got the idea to make a film called 2046 back in the late 90s. Filming started on this project in the year 2000, and he spent the next 4 years working on the film, shooting the film, editing the film. He was editing it right up to when it was premiered at Cannes in spring of 2004. And in that 4 years, basically he was writing sort of as he went along. So it went from, I think, the very first version of the story was, it was about a hired killer, sort of a gangster film. It became a more political story that was supposed to be entirely set in the year 2046, which is 1 year before the end of Hong Kong's self-rule. Then it was supposed to, at one point, it was going to be a documentary in which Wong would go door to door and interview everyone in Hong Kong who had a 2046 street address to its final form, which is a sort of continuation of the film he made right before 2046, the film In the Mood for Love, with Tony Leung playing a different version of the same character. So 2046 begins more or less where the film In the Mood for Love leaves off. In 1966, the Tony Leung character, Chow, he returns, presumably from an assignment in Cambodia. He's trying to forget a thwarted relationship with the love of his life that never, for various reasons, came off. So we follow him over the next few years. Mostly we see his encounters with a variety of women. He's much more of a ladies' man in 2046 than the character was in the Mood for Love. And some of these women he grows attached to, some he doesn't, some he gets involved with, some he doesn't. At one point in the film, the Chow character says, "Love is a matter of timing." And this line could be taken as close to the thematic essence of Wong Kar-Wai's cinema, because almost all of his films deal in some way or another with unrequited love, rejection, longing in some form. Bad timing prevents characters who should be together from actually getting together. This is sort of the whole subject of In the Mood for Love. In the Mood for Love is about two people who gradually come to realize that their partners are having an affair, that their spouses are having an affair. And so Chow and Mrs. Chan, who's played by Maggie Chung in the Mood for Love, they really should be together. They fall in love, they really should be together, but she can't bring herself to leave her husband. Or in his films, two people who really shouldn't be together get together. So memories of the true love that got away, or the true love that never that could have been, is something that haunts the characters in his films, and it often prevents meaningful relationships with new people for them. And in fact, 2046 in this film turns out to not really be a year, as you would expect. It's more like a place. It's a place specifically where people travel, and this is within the story, within the film, to recover memories of lost loves. These themes within his work, they're most prevalent in The Mood for Love and 2046, because these are two films that are essentially telling the same type of stories with some of the same characters. You could even argue that In the Mood for Love and 2046 are actually the second and third films in a 60s trilogy. The first film being Days of Being Wild, a 1990 film that was actually the second film that Chow made. These are all about lost love. They're all set in the 1960s, in other words, the time of Wong's childhood. Days of Being Wild it takes place in the early part of the decade, the first few years. It centers around a sort of James Dean type of character played by Leslie Chung, who is involved with several women, one of whom is named a woman named Lulu, who returns in 2046 as that character. The very last scene, 66, with the Chow character, he's a newspaper reporter. He's on assignment in Cambodia. The last scene takes place at Angkor Wat, the Cambodian temple, where his character speaks his life's greatest secret into a hole in the stone wall, and he seals it up with mud. The idea being that his deepest secret, the fact that he's in love with this woman, Mrs. Chan, is sealed up from the world forever. That idea of speaking your deepest secret into some sort of hole and covering it up is then replayed over and over again in 2046. It's one of probably dozens of points of overlap between In the Mood for Love and 2046. The number 2046 itself is seen in The Mood for Love. It's the number of the hotel room where Chow moves after his marriage fails, and where Mrs. Chan, the Maggie Chung character, visits repeatedly, and the two of them collaborate on this martial arts newspaper serial. So in the end, I mean, 2046, I don't want to suggest that you can't understand the film if you haven't seen In the Mood for Love. But certainly it perhaps might resonate on a deeper level. 2046 is kind of a culmination in a number of ways. It's a culmination of Wong's interest in the 1960s, the period in which he grew up in Hong Kong. It's the culmination of his interest in this theme of lost love or unrequited love. And it's also, I think, the culmination of his interest in serial narrative construction. And in fact, the newspaper serials that Chow works on, that is writing in 2046, are very much like Wong's own process of narrating and revising and expressing the same kinds of obsessions in multiple versions. So there are actions and lines and almost entire scenes in 2046 that, in essence, replicate moments from In the Mood for Love. The fascination, I think, for both Wong and for the viewer are in the very subtle variations. Variations in acting styles, variations in musical accompaniment. In the Mood for Love contains a number of songs from the recording artist Nat King Cole. They're Spanish language songs. In this film, though, Nat King Cole sings the Christmas song. There's variations in camera framing. 2046 is the first Wong Kar-wai film to be shot in the CinemaScope process. There's variations in color scheme. If you've seen In the Mood for Love, you know that it's a film that's dominated by these deep reds. 2046 has every kind of shade of green possible, and the effect, especially when you're watching a 35mm print, the effect is really stunning. It's I think one of the most beautifully shot films in recent years. So 2046, it might not be his most essential film, and someone pointed out, well, it is it's almost like a sort of greatest hits sort of medley. All of the obsessions and the thematic and the stylistic motifs that you see in all of Wong Kar-wai's films leading up to it. But that said, for that reason, I guess it's his most characteristic film, and it does seem to. I mean, who knows? What the Grandmasters is going to be like. Who knows what his career is going to be from this point on. But it's an excellent sort of summation and a very representative look at what kind of filmmaker he is. That said, you should also watch all of the earlier films too, all of the films that he made before 2046. So I guess we're ready to roll, and thank you very much for coming out, and I hope you really enjoy the film.